All right. Hello. Welcome to the stream. Um, Hopefully it should have started. There always seems to be a really unpredictable lag between when it said it started and then when I look at the actual video, it's like me halfway through my greeting. But anyway, so what we're going to be doing today is talking a little
If
bit
it's
about.
helpful, it hasn't started on my end.
It hasn't started on your own. Oh yeah, but that's also the delay of. So I'm talking about when I start talking, it cuts off the beginning, even though it said it started recording. If you get me, what you're getting is just the server client delay.
Gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, that voice you hear is Phenomiks, who has kindly agreed to chat with everyone about crisis theory and like the falling rate of profit. Um, if, if you're on this stream, then you are probably aware that I made a video about value theory and Marxist value theory, where I cast some doubt on the robustness and importance of the falling rate of profit. But Phenomics is here to tell me that I'm at least partially wrong. Is that right?
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said on the labor theory of value. I subscribe to more like what's called like a cost reductionist theory of value, or like what I call that. I think that you called it something like you had a very similar concept that you called like measuring the like physical profit rate. Uh,
Hmm.
is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I just think that even measuring with that, you can find like a falling rate of profit, and that the labor theory of value, in the same way that you said, like the marginal theory of value, can be like useful in certain circumstances to kind of understand how certain aspects of the economy end up flowing. I think that like as a basic estimate, we can use the labor theory of value sometimes, which is why the labor theory of value like happens to be correct on this issue. But I don't think that it's like I don't think that it's like actually determinant of prices or like necessary for any of my beliefs.
Right. Okay. So let's unpack that a little bit because I mean I can get on board with a much more qualified defense of the labor theory of value, right? Like so essentially what the way I would think about it is like, the labor theory of value is a lens through which to view capitalism, and especially through which to view like capitalism historically and the dynamics of crisis that can certainly be useful, right? It can make sense of some historical observations, some historical periods, and some data perhaps. But I'm much more skeptical of it as a general theory. I'm not 100% convinced that you know labor is the source of value. I'm not convinced that the
Mhm.
tests of the labor theory of value, like the falling rate of profit, necessarily confirm that. I think they may not be robust. They may be explained by other means, um, and so I think it's all a bit uncertain. But with all that said, again, it is okay to say, we're adopting a Marxist framework. Look at how that helps us to understand how crisis emerges. So does that make sense? That was quite a long diatribe in the end.
No, I get it. I think we're just basically going to agree on that. I don't even think it's necessary. I was just stating my position so that you knew that I didn't take contention with like the whole video, just that like section on the rate of profit. I think that
Okay.
for the purposes of this conversation, though, we can talk about like physical profit rates or like cost reduction profit rates.
Okay. Okay. So
So
so do you want to explain to me like what type of profit rate you think is relevant, and like how and why it's relevant?
So I think there's going to be a lot of overlap here because even if it's not caused by like labor generating value, there is going to be a strong correlation between like value and labor hours in any given industry. Obviously, we can like see that trend develop. Like if we assume that there's like zero correlation between value and labor value, we can see it develop because of a bunch of other factors, like a bunch of
That's like the
external
kind of
factors.
cockshot test, right? And some other people.
Exactly. So, but even if we don't use that, I'm just saying that that's why there's going to be some overlap in the data. If we don't use that, I think that we can use like a post Keynesian interpretation of how the profit rate interacts with the economy, where we accept the basic idea that like aggregate demand is what drives recessions in the business cycle. But we add a little stipulation that says like the biggest driver of aggregate demand is going to be the investment, right? The investment sector, and the investment demand is going to be driven really strongly by this rate of profit tendency. Koleski seemed like agnostic in general onto whether the rate of profit like falls over time or if it just like is a it's like a stable cycle. But he did recognize this like this general tendency that like at some points there's like a rise and fall in the rate of profit that seems to like be determinant of the rate of profit cycle. And we know that to be the case today. We have like much better data which shows that the rate of profit falls. I think it's 3 to 5 quarters before a recession occurs. So we can see that it's like it preempts recessions.
So this is the economy-wide rate of profit, like aggregate profits over aggregate costs, and
Yes,
that
yes.
predicts recessions.
In general, you're not really going to be referring to like aggregate in the sense that we would typically think, but in like a purely capitalist society, yes. The issue is going to be that if you socialize investment, this is like the solution, right? So anything that's done by the state is like there's a reason that Koleski and Keynes both said that in order to maintain like full employment or to avoid recessions, we need to socialize investment. And the area because the areas that have socialized investment aren't going to stop investing when the rate of profit falls. So only in the capitalist sectors are you gonna see this like falling profit. But within those private market sectors, yeah, when you see
Yeah.
a fall in profitability, you see a recession about 3 to 5, or it's 4 to 5 quarters before a recession.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we can maybe talk about solutions in a bit. But
Hmm.
I was just wondering, so so can you tell me a little bit more about the paper that you're drawing from when you say that recessions predict when you say that the rate of profit predicts recessions, right? Can you tell me a little bit
Hmm.
more about that paper and that data? Because I'm not 100% convinced this is causal, and I feel like this needs unpacking.
I just sent it over. Yeah, I think that it's strong evidence that it's causal because it happens prior to. I can also send another study that shows a really strong correlation between between like the falling profitability and the fall in GDP. That'll talk about like comparing it to like labor share of income, things like that, like comparing it to a variety of other metrics that you would do for like a neo-Keynesian or like a traditional Keynesian as opposed to like a post-Keynesian interpretation of the data. Um, the study that I just sent over though is going to be using NBER data to look at like the profit and
Hmm.
let me look really quick to figure out where it's going to be looking at like wages. I remember it being like a fairly reputable source. It's in a peer-reviewed journal, obviously, review of radical political economy. Um,
But I think my issue is like with this preceding finding, right? Like it's like okay, so you can do. I mean, I don't know. Do they use like a Granger causality test? Is that the type of framework we're talking about here, or
Not exactly. It's finding a correlation, and then it's just finding preceding. If there's like another explanation for why the rate of profit falls before a recession, as opposed to like in consequence of a recession or in tandem with a recession, that could be like an alternative theory. But this, to me, seems like the most plausible explanation is like the traditional post Keynesian explanation. That's
hmm.
like held by like the vast majority of post Keynesians.
Yeah. So what? Yeah, I think the thing is there are quite a lot of things that precede a recession, right? So you have the classic example is like an inverted yield curve, right? Like the yields
Hmm.
on long term bonds start to go down relative to short term bonds. But then I
But
don't
you
know
would
if I'd attach a kind of causal interpretation to that.
no, because it'd be hard to figure out like what the mechanism is, right? But in this case, you can tell that like something like that would be likely to occur if there was a dip in profitability beforehand. And the connection, I think that I can spell it out a little bit more clearly, but the connection
Sure.
between like demand and investment, or demand for investment, and demand for like capital goods or whatever. Why this would like why this going down would lead to like a sort of like a spiraling effect of it going down in general. Because like you like the fall in demand obviously would lead to a fall in supply, which leads to a fall in broader demand, et cetera, et
But
cetera.
I
Because
do
like
I do
wages.
think that like this mechanism, it might not be as sure a thing as maybe you're making out, because so one of the issues is like the difference between aggregate and like a industry level or whatever.
Hmm.
So you know the it's not clear to me that the aggregate level of profit across the whole economy necessarily applies to any one firm, and therefore it's not clear to me that they'll be using that as a basis for decisions. So do
It
firms pay
shouldn't be, right?
attention to
Can I
that?
explain?
Yeah, please, please, please.
Yeah, I would agree. It's not that the actual rate of profit is what they're looking at, right? They're probably going to be looking at something more like rate of return on investment. The issue is this like spiral, right? If you have like some substantial portion of the economy see this like dip in demand, then there's going to be like there's going to be less investment, and thus there's going to be like less people having the jobs because of the lower investment. And then you see like another dip, therefore, because like the less jobs means that people are less demanding of other things, meaning that there's less incentive to invest in like the general economy. So as long as it's like some substantial portion of the economy, there would be an explanation for why it would go across industries.
Okay, so it's declining investment. The rate of profit causes a decline in investment, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of mechanism that you're highlighting. But the rate of profit is like it's calculated usually as like and this might get into how they calculate it in this paper, and I'll take a look at this paper in a second. I've got my stuff stuck in a Warsaw Gulch. Um,
You're good.
but yeah, so I sorry, the rate of profit in these calculations is often like a kind of surplus value over like the current value of the capital stock, whereas it seems to me that like the rate of investment would be determined by something more like the profits versus like the cost of current investment. So do you see like there's a kind of discrepancy here, right? The cost of new investment, sorry, I should say. So like there might be a
Hmm.
discrepancy between these two measures, and I'm not quite convinced by this mechanism.
So the post Keynesian interpretation is there's going to be like some sort of like agnosticism within like most Marxian papers, but when the post Keynesian interpretation is pretty solid on the idea that we should be using historical costs,
Hmm.
um, which is just going to like generally give us like a good predictor of where rate of return on income is going to be coming from. If we can get like a rate of return on income for, or sorry, not income, investment, a rate of return on investment for the entire economy, I think this is going to be like a better measure for what we're actually looking for. In the same way that, as opposed to like capital stock, a lot of people use like capital output ratio as a proxy. I don't actually think that the capital output ratio is a good proxy. I think that if we really get down to it, the capital output ratio is what's driving the problem there. It's not like the capital stock. I think that in that same way, using like a rate of return on investment is what we're actually getting at. If we could have like an aggregate economy-wide rate of return on investment, but since we don't have that, the best thing we're going to be able to find is like capital stock giving us like some predictors of about like what capital stock in the future is going to be like, so that like what people are actually going to be using, right, is like these like general trends of like this is how much it costs and this is how much profit we'll be getting in the future.
But I guess it's like it's okay. So it might be an indicator, but is there a better measure, right? If we can get like the earnings, the predictor of investment for me would be like the earnings and the financing capabilities of the firm. Um,
Exactly, the profitability.
compared to the cost of new investment.
Exactly, which if we can find a better estimate for the cost of new investment, I'd love to see that instead. Like I said, the rate of
Mhm.
return on investment is like really what we're getting at.
Yeah.
I just haven't been able
Yeah.
to find anything that does measure that, and this seems to be like a good enough proxy that we can extrapolate from. I think that like our credence for this shouldn't obviously be like 100%, right? It's like as with anything in economics, we're not going to like be 100% certain on the issue. But I do think that we can have like more credence than not by using some of these proxies since they're the best data available. Since nobody's looking for like there's not very much like money or research going into like creating databases for these like what's it called unorthodox economics, heterodox. There we go. That's what I'm thinking of.
No, no.
These
Well,
like
I mean, yeah. One big issue I have, right, is like these you know, the types of categories you would use in like profit calculations. They tend to not be measured, right, because Marxist economics obviously isn't, or anything like Marxist economics isn't like the mainstream. So
yeah,
it's
exactly.
like it can be quite difficult, and you know, a lot of the time when you're trying to investigate the rate of profit, you'll get Marxists sort of sometimes quite fairly saying to you, "Oh well, you know, you're not using the right categories, basically, right? You're not using the right categories, but like those
Hmm.
categories aren't available for historical reasons that relate to you know what's gathered." Um, but that does make
Exactly.
it kind of hard to be convinced of the existing tests that we have, right?
I agree. The issue is just we're gonna have to use like Bayesian inference, right? We're not gonna be able to say there's like a 100% credence in this. We're just gonna have to say like we this is gonna raise our credence to some significant extent to where it's at least worthwhile to like to put more investment and thought into this. And if and with something this big, and we can talk about like timelines and stuff in a minute if you want. But with something this big, it's probably important to like at least have a high enough credence to do more research and to like to consider it. And considering that it's the data that we have says that this is a better predict, even with just the proxy, right? It ends up being like a better predictor of recessions than like the traditional Keynesian like Tobin's Q or like other ways of measuring like aggregate demand that are going to be based more on consumer demand. Um,
Mm.
Given the data that we have, we should probably have more credence for this than other things, and definitely enough credence to like be taking the theory seriously and doing more research.
So when you talk about the falling rate of profit, then so there's this assuming it's like a predictor of recession. So
Hmm.
what's kind of driving it, right? Because like you hinted that you're maybe leaning at least as much towards a more Keynesian slash Collectian interpretation of like why it's falling. Is that did I hear you correctly? Did I interpret you correctly?
So I have a much more like Keynesian slash Kleskian interpretation of why the rate of profit is a driver of recessions, like the actual mechanism behind it. But I think that the sort of like a synthesis of Koleski and Marx ends up giving us just based on the data that we have. A better understanding of why the rate of profit's falling, and the capital output ratio in particular seems to be like the biggest driver. I know you already know that there's like a substantial correlation between capital output ratio and the falling profitability. I can send you over data for that if you want more, but I'm pretty sure that you agree on that. I remember you saying something like that on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So I my basic principle behind this is just going to be like the higher the capital output ratio, the greater the supply, which drives down price. And I would be like without data, I would just be agnostic on whether that like drives down price to a greater extent than it like increases like the amount of stuff that you can make and thus like the amount of profit that you can make. Except for the fact that just the data doesn't seem to indicate that, right? There seems to be like a very strong negative correlation between capital output ratio and the rate of profit.
Right. Okay. So there's higher level of capital investment necessarily precipitates a fall in price through the mechanism of competition. That.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to basically.
Yeah, basically.
With the more specifically being like how it affects the supply.
Yeah. Okay. But could it not just equally lead to like an expansion in the supply curve?
Yeah, exactly. If they're or sorry, it would obviously lead to an expansion, and or like it would lead to a raise in the supply curve, which would reduce price, right? I agree that it's possible that it could increase profitability such that like it you create more in theory you could create more than the reduction in price, so that could be like a long-term growth in profitability. It just again, I would the only reason that I'm agnostic on that is the data. I have no like theoretical reason for why that would be the case as opposed to another. We could kind of get into like why the labor theory of value might be like approximating well here. But I think that the more important thing to look at is just like the fact that there is this correlation uh, gives us like the best explanation seems to be that.
Yeah, okay. So, but if you've got like kind of Schumpeterian, right? Well, slash even Marxist type creative destruction, right? You might see capital investment result in like the emergence of new industries. You might see the establishment of monopoly power, um, and therefore you might actually see it associated with like an expansion of profit.
Yeah, like again, in theory, it
In
just
theory.
doesn't seem to be borne out in the data.
Born out in the data. Okay, so which data is this that you're referring to? Exactly.
I mean, like you said, you already agree that the capital output ratio is going to be correlated with the rate of profit. I can send you
Well,
I think the best data set that we have on that is the what's it called? The Basu et al. Working play paper. I don't know if you've seen it. It's titled World Profit Rates 1960 to 2019, and it shows
yeah, I have
like a
seen this
really
paper.
strong correlation between the two. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I think yeah. Sorry, so yeah. Sorry if I made you repeat yourself. It's just that I think there's an issue that maybe I'm having here with these aggregates and how convincing I find them, because I do think, in fact, I know because I did it this afternoon, that you can generate like examples um, where you have this kind of aggregate behavior. You have this kind of aggregate behavior with a rising capital output ratio. But thank God I've won the Warsaw Gulch, right? So we can actually talk about these papers now. But you can you can you can. It was a mistake to play WoW while speaking to you. This is a very detailed discussion. Somebody in the chat said it was disrespectful. I hope you didn't feel it was that way. I just it's just very common in the space, and I just wanted people to have something to like look at.
No, I fully understand. I told you beforehand I was going to be wildly impressed if you could keep up with that.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I mean, someone in chat says they're impressed that I managed to keep up, but I didn't fully. So let's talk about this, because right. So I've now got this up on my. So the rising capital output ratio, and the falling rate of profit, I think can hide, right? Because often this is my issue, right? When whether it's Marxist or Kolechkin, and I say that as a lover of Kolechki and to be honest of Marx as well. Okay, I'm getting a kind of 404 thing. This paper, by
I
the
hate
way.
Marx's philosophy, but
Oh, do you? Okay.
no, I think he happens to be like pretty correct on some econ things. Obviously, I just think that like anything that has to do with Hegel is going to be pretty dog shit. Um,
Yeah, I
but
mean
anyway,
that.
sorry.
Yeah, I don't know that much about Hegel. Yeah, this paper link isn't working, by the way. It
Oh, it's
won't
not.
open. No.
Um, Let me
So
see. Because I just had it open. I was like looking at it. I could even show it to my stream. I could try and stream it over Discord. Let me see really quick. Yeah, it's opening for me. On Sci-Hub, right?
yeah, I
Or
mean, I
not
might
on
put it
Sci-Hub.
in my chat.
Um,
So
Yeah,
My
I'm not
chat.
sure. There's a save button here. Can I save it as a, yeah, I can just send you the PDF.
Oh,
That'll
nice
be
one, nice
helpful.
one. Thank you. But
All right,
anyway,
there you
so
go.
what I was going to say is these aggregate, these aggregate results, and I bang on about this on my channel quite a lot. I mean, I don't know if you've watched any of my videos, but with with the Jordan Peterson video I made, there's this finding. What is wrong with my computer? There's this finding called the gender equality paradox, which is like a correlation between gender representation in STEM and gender discrimination. A negative correlation showing that gender discrimination is associated with less gender discrimination is actually associated with a lower proportion of women in STEM. And Jordan
I'm assuming this
Peterson,
is discrimination in the field.
it's a generalized index of gender discrimination. You're immediately
Oh,
spotting
interesting.
one of the issues. They might not be consonant those. But if you haven't seen it, maybe it's a bit too much of a digression. But basically, this is just like an aggregate level correlation, and you can't infer that like individual level gender discrimination and is negatively correlated with female representation in STEM from that. And I just find sometimes that a lot of Marxists and Kolechkians, they're focused on like either aggregates or what you would call maybe a representative model, right? So with Marx, you've got like sometimes it's just like it's almost an abstract, like he's just talking about like labor. There's labor, it produces surplus value. There's capital, constant capital, variable capital, right? And then there's a surplus value. So it's almost like a representative agent type argument. With Kolechki, it's more like an accounting identity, right? The Kolechki profit equation at the aggregate level. And I think, this can hide like a whole sea of industries where there's a whole bunch of different things going on. And you can have like creative destruction in some sectors, and you can have like very profitable industries in some sectors, and it just seems to me that it may not be the case that the rate of profit across the whole economy is actually a key driver of investment decisions with this much heterogeneity. So I appreciate for everybody in the chat that I just used a fucking load of economics jargon. Um, but do you see where I'm coming from, right? And it's very easy. So with the Jordan Peterson example, I showed that you can have assumptions at the individual level that are completely different to the outcome at the aggregate level. And I feel like you can have, I know, right, you can have assumptions at the level of individual industries here where they're not suffering profitability crises, right, where they are investing capital and they're getting more money, but on the aggregate there's this kind of correlation between capital output and recessions.
Right. I think that the big thing that I'm gonna just be appealing to here is it seems better than any other theory that we have, right? If we're looking at like what causes recessions, we could just take the very unparsimonious theory that recessions are basically random, right? That there's like a bunch of different random causes for recessions. Which would make sense. It would just like be like it would explain the data. It just kind of seems like overfitting. It seems like when we have like broad tendencies like this, we would want like explanations for why the tendencies exist in a more parsimonious way. We could take the Keynesian interpretation, like the not Koleskian, but like Keynesian pure interpretation, where we say it's like animal spirits plus like how much income labor has to spend, things like this. But those animal spirits kind of ends up boiling down into like the very unparsimonious, like there's just a bunch of different causes for recessions, and if there's a bunch of recessions and like different patterns, it's kind of it just all happens to be coincidence. And also it doesn't it's kind of shallow. It doesn't explain like what drives animal spirits. I think that if we like actually look at it, what is driving investment and whatnot is going to be like animal spirits. It's just like animal spirits are going to be like very influenced by the rate of profit, right? Like you're going to be scared if you see the number lower, and you're going to be happier. Like you're going to be more willing, like more eager to invest if it's not. Even if you're like we assume it's to like some degree like monkey brain feelings. Those feelings are going to be like to some extent driven by the actual like data that people are seeing. And then if we're just talking about like labor's income, that it just when we compare it in like a probit model, it seems like the rate of profit is going to be more determinant than like a traditional labor's income.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking at this figure 1 now, right? So you've got the recessions, right? And you've got total corporate profit. But this is a decline in total corporate profits at the beginning of the paper. Sorry. But that's not the rate of profit, right? I mean, I'm only looking at figure 1.
So it is going to end up being the rate of profit. It's just kind of calling it. It's not calling it like rate of profit. It's calling it like profitability. Let me open it up really quickly so that I can look at this with you. The
total corporate profits seem to predict recessions as I mean, okay, look, I'm fucking eyeballing a graph here. I'm doing what I always have a go at people for doing, but I'm just working my way through this paper, everybody. So this is how you start. But yeah, let's not stop at just eyeballing. But I'm just saying the total profits seem to dip, right, and then there's a recession. Now there are lots of potential explanations for that, maybe, but that's not the rate of profit, right? So do we have the rate of profit later? Do they do something that's more like a kind of rate of profit?
I'm not sure. When you say like a Marxist type rate of profit, do you just mean like profits over like wages or whatever?
So figure 1, we on the Tapia Granados paper. Figure 1 is like total corporate profits before and after taxes subdivided for the financial and non-financial sectors, right? Centered moving average of 3/4. So you've got, this is like total profits, right? Which that doesn't surprise me that they're predictive, that a decline in those is predictive of a recession. Just because we talk about like leads and lags, right? There do tend to be lags, right? Like, so profits will decline and it will be a while before businesses have cut back enough for there to actually be 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, what a recession is defined as, right? So there's, for me, figure 1, there is like nothing surprising about this graph and nothing that kind of suggests any type of Marxist interpretation to me. But I don't know. I might not be looking at the right part of the paper here, because this is just the
So yeah, if you scroll down to like figure 4, it's already talking about like wages and salaries. The further you go down, it starts talking about the different interpretations of what this could mean, and like why like what happens when we start like using like data like wages and salaries.
Okay, I don't know that I'm gonna be able to read through this. It's actually quite a short paper, isn't it? But
it is,
I don't know if people want necessarily to read this. No,
probably not.
Yeah, on the stream.
If you want,
I'm not. I don't know. I'm just worried there's a bit of a slip here, because so clearly profits are important, right? Investment is financed out of profits. Profits are also a signal for businesses that a particular industry is profitable, obviously, tautologically. But it's a signal for them to invest more, because they're going to expect to make more money in the future, right? So definitely profits are important, and they're surely a predictor of recessions. whether there's some kind of Kolechkian interpretation or Marxist interpretation underlying this is where I get a bit more skeptical. And I mean, I'll have to take a look at this paper in more depth, but you're saying they do talk about, so they talk about whether wages predict it better.
So I can send you the Probit model that also compares it to like Tobin's Q and similar measures for like traditional KT and stuff.
Yeah.
If you'd like, since I know these papers are going to be like a lot to look through,
Yeah.
we can come back to like the specifics of this topic,
Okay.
and we can talk about specifically like artificial intelligence, and how that's going to be affecting the capital output ratio, and in general timelines on that, since
So,
I think this issue flows well into that, and the existential risk territory there is a little bit more important.
God, okay, this is going to be heavier than even heavier than I expected. But can we, before we talk about that? So,
For sure.
first, first warning: artificial intelligence is like I'd say it's my Achilles heel, but I have many Achilles heels. I really don't know anything about it, so like I'm really absolutely happy for you to lay it out. I don't know if I'll have that much to contribute, but first, so with the falling rate of
There's the
profit,
Probit model.
with the falling rate of profit, a probit model. Oh, nice one. So let me just access that if I can off screen so people can't see all my logins and stuff. So sorry, with the can't remember my own password, of course. With the falling rate of profit. One second, now I have to text myself.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'll just tell your chat really quick, because I see a lot of stuff saying about all your communist friends. I'm a liberal socialist, much more in the lines like John Stuart Mill, like a market socialist, not a communist.
Can you ask your communist friends about grain shortages in the USSR? Oh Jesus Christ! Jesus.
I also think that's like a terrible critique of communism. I think there's good critiques of communism. I just like the USSR is like it never claimed to be communist. There was like a communist party that claimed to be socialist. It clearly wasn't socialist. And also, we're gonna
I think
agree on
also
that.
like just like even if I say like I agree with not just you but like Marx completely about the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, almost nothing about exactly how a different society is organized would would spring from that, and like no,
Exactly. Yeah.
there's doesn't follow to make a defense of like Volodymyr or anything like that. But this actually segues nicely. So this is seamless. I planted this person because it does segue into solutions. So because you said before, right? So we're looking at a situation where profits might not be sustained; they might decline. Now, this could be for Marxist reasons. It could be for Kolechkian reasons. But what do you think needs to happen, whether within the rough bounds of a capitalist economy or outside them, to prevent this and ameliorate it?
So I think we're probably going to agree on this, and it's going to be pretty intuitive. The issue to like investment falling because the profitability rate is too low is to just disconnect investment from profitability, right? You socialize investment. At that point, there's like it would be like insane. It would be like you would basically be creating fascist economics if you maintained like any capitalism. And when I say fascist economics, I obviously mean that like in the academic sense, not in the like it's super authoritarian and racist or whatever. I just mean it's like the state is driving investment and you have capitalists running business because basically you're evil and you have no other like or you like for some reason think like capitalists are superhuman or something. But well, at that point, this is like the Kolesky interpretation. The Pileski and Keynes both suggested the same thing, right? Socialize all of investment. It's the only way that we can prevent recessions and maintain full employment.
I think it's worth pointing out as well that one one thing which is definitely a fact is that capital investment has been slowing in a lot of rich countries over the past decades, and some kind of, socialization of investment. I mean, even people like Larry Summers kind of admit this when he was like talking about secular stagnation, right? And I think there's been an acknowledgement of this sustained low investment. So whatever the reasons, I think I tend to agree with you that there needs to be like a much bigger role for the state in sustaining investment, and that follows more from a Kolechkin model than a Marxist model, right?
For
I
sure.
don't know that Marxists wouldn't be happy with that, right? Because it's obviously it's not overthrowing the capitalist system.
I mean, ideally, it should come with overthrowing the capitalist system, right? If the state is like taking like the brunt of investment, if the state is investing in like capitalist enterprises, this is like wildly inefficient and wildly undemocratic. At that point, it makes way more sense to like divide the economy into state-owned enterprises, social wealth funds, and cooperatives, consumer and worker. Because if you're socializing investment, but your investment is all going to capitalists, you're basically just like collecting taxes in order to like fund the wealthy.
Do you think that worker co-ops would prevent? Oh, Jesus. Do you think that worker co-ops would like prevent this kind of profitability crisis?
The issue is going to be an investment, right? So as long as we have some sort of system where like there's a bunch of different market socialist systems that are entirely cooperative. I don't think we should be entirely cooperative. I think that we should be like worker co-ops in particular should only probably be like somewhere approximately around like a sixth of the economy. Worker and consumer cooperatives together should probably make up about a third of the economy.
Those are
But
very precise figures. Where did you find
those
those?
are like so the only way I'm arriving at these is I just give like about one third social state-owned enterprise, about one third social wealth fund, and about one third cooperative. And a
Okay,
cooperative seems to be like 50-50 derived about throwing among those two. Those are incredibly rough figures. They're not incredibly precise figures. I think that we can target them not based on like we want this to make up X percentage of the economy. I just think this is how it'll end up being if we target it based on like consumer cooperatives should go in this sector because it's most
right,
beneficial. Worker cooperatives should go in this sector because it's most beneficial. And just breaking it down, like social wealth funds seem to be really good for like very capital intensive industries. Consumer cooperatives seem to be really good for like stores, like grocery
sure.
stores,
Cool.
things where you have like consistent need for like goods to be sold.
And
And
tech
I think that
companies as
worker
well. Social media, I'd
exactly.
say consumer co-ops definitely for those types of companies. YouTube, Twitter.
I actually think most social media should probably be state-owned enterprise. But that
Oh,
has
really?
mostly to do with like freedom of speech issues. I think that it's like really important to have these platforms that are now like where the discourse takes place. I think it's really good to have really strong freedom of speech standards so that everybody's able to uh, um, have a platform to be able to get out their voice because freedom of speech really means freedom of platform in the 21st century.
Okay, okay,
I
that's
would be okay with
interesting.
consumer cooperatives too. It'd be better than capitalist firms. Just really anything other than capitalist firms is always going to be better.
Yeah, generally speaking, certainly, like kind of outside of maybe smaller
Like startups, yeah.
businesses or whatever, you know what I mean. Not that I'm rarefying small businesses, by the way. I don't like to do that too much, but I just, there's sort of almost pre-capitalist ideas of business, aren't there, right? Where people get paid and people get paid in order to carry out a service, right? But it's just that they don't have the same type of capital expansion as the modern day. Anyway, sorry, this is a bit of a digression. No, but you were saying how this network of co-ops and state-owned enterprises won't necessarily face a profitability crisis.
Right. So I think that these are just like what becomes like pretty obviously and blatantly fair once we socialize investment. But if like 80 to 90+% of investment, maybe we're going to disagree on how much of investment specifically needs to be socialized. But if
Hmm.
huge portions of investment actually need to be socialized, first of all, that alone will like disconnect investment from profitability, right? So when there's a dip in profitability, you won't see these huge like spirals of like supply falling and then demand falling, et cetera, because the government will just do what it does, the Keynesian thing, where it'll either take debt or it'll redistribute income. It'll do whatever it needs to do to like raise demand again. Um, on the on the side of that, though, the cooperatives, social wealth funds, it's pretty clear how that's going to occur. Cooperatives, I've seen some interesting ideas about how like you could essentially have like rented out means of production to cooperatives. That has some interesting implications. I think a better solution is probably just to have uh, like very low debt or low to no debt loans to cooperatives by the government, run by like some sort of like state bank or something like that. And by doing that, you would again have the state involved in investment so that you don't see it fall when like a cooperative, if it has like some sort of fall in profitability or whatever, it's not like it's going to be relying on like I can't take investment right now, where a bank doesn't want to invest in me. It's going to be relying on like the Federal Reserve or like a state bank or some sort of institution like that saying
But
like this is the amount of money that needs to go into the economy.
doesn't that assume though that the constraint on, so the reason that the rate of profit matters is that businesses can't afford to invest anymore when it's too low, right? Because of the cost of credit. But
Either they
then
can't
aren't there other
afford or they don't
reasons?
have an incentive. It depends.
But
It's probably some combination of the two.
yeah, but if the falling rate of profit, the lack of incentive could also apply to co-ops as well, right?
Exactly. The issue is that that lack of incentive won't exist if they're being offered like low to no interest loans from like a state-owned investment firm. So whether it's like an enterprise, like a bank, or whether it's like a like the like I said, like the Federal Reserve, or like it's some sort of agreement with social wealth funds where like some portion of it will get owned by the social wealth fund, but it becomes like it's still like majority cooperative. Any of these models would be like the places where you'd be getting investment.
I think
And
you
as
still need the government to backstop the co-ops, though. That's kind of what I'm saying, right? So you might, yeah, if you've
yeah,
got these free-ish loans, then you might reduce the problem from the cost side, but not from the supply side, right? But not from the demand side. But then you still need government spending to stabilize the economy, because presumably you're talking about market socialism, right? So the co-ops are going to be exposed to competition, which you identified as the driver of the falling rate of profit, right? Because that's what
it's
drives prices
competition and
down.
investment,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Or sorry, you're right in that it's like it's competition in like the prices of goods as well. But again, the issue is going to be like the reason that this falling rate of profit becomes an issue is because it leads to investment, right? If the rate of profit falls in this like one third of cooperative sector, it and it's just like a temporary fall, that's going to be like bad for the workers on like a very small level, but it's not going to cause the main issue that we care about, which is the 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 fall in investment, right? As long as investment stays stable, we don't see the spiral out into an investment. We just see like that cooperative doesn't make as much anymore. If it's getting a free loan, it's going to have every incentive to continue to invest, right? That the investment, like, if you have free money, what are you going to do with it? And on the other end, we can
But the
mitigate
market
these
could
like
dry up, right? The market could dry up. There could be, or it could, or not even dry up. It could literally stabilize, right? This is just what I'm thinking.
mhm.
Like co-ops are still going to have this problem, if only to a lesser extent under this system, because their demand might stabilize. There might be price competition, and so they're saying, okay, even though the loan's free, it's not worthwhile for me to borrow, and therefore you are going to get like a falling rate of profit, predicting lower
It's not worth
investment
it for
in
them
the.
to take like free money. I just don't understand how it would be like it wouldn't they wouldn't have an incentive to like take free money and give it.
But if
And
somebody
on the
gave
other
me
end,
some free money now, like I wouldn't start a
mhm.
business with it, because like I don't have any market, really, right? Do you know what I mean?
Well,
Like
no,
I
but
wouldn't necessarily expand.
you're saying like for your channel, is that like the business that you're referencing?
Yeah, or anything,
Yeah.
right? I'm just saying, like the demand has to be there as well, right? And I think the
hmm
sources that it comes from two different sources. So I'm just all I'm saying is I don't think that co-ops aren't going to have this problem. Horrible double negative. Co-ops are going to have this problem, right? I think that if there's a falling rate, if there's falling profits for co-ops, they are going to invest less as well,
I
like
think
under this framework.
I think I figured out the illustration, like the difference in the illustration that's being missed.
Okay.
So the so the supply of the thing of the goods, right? That's what goes up, which drives prices down, which should drive demand up, right? That's like it's not going to lead to like a lack of consumer demand. Where the issue in demand comes in is that because the prices go down much lower, such that even though more people are buying your product, your profitability has still gone low. It leads to a fall in profitability, which that leads to a fall in demand for investment, right? And that fall in demand for investment drives a lot of other things, and that when investment falls, there's a fall in the supply of like whatever things are being sold, which leads to like a fall in demand because like an inability to pay wages or like people being laid off or like various different problems. And this is what leads to these like spiraling recessions. If you have the socialized part of investment, that fall in profitability will be like it'll be like not great for the cooperative. The cooperative will lose some income, but it won't be so much lost income that or sorry, it won't have any effect on investment. So it won't it like that the recession problem won't occur. And as far as like lost income, that's the type of thing that can be mitigated given that most of the economy is going to be owned by like social wealth funds and state-owned enterprises by some sort of like UBI or welfare project, or you could even give like specific policies for this, right? Like when profitability falls, sponsor cooperatives as long as it's like aggregate, so that you're maintaining competition and you're not just sponsoring like any cooperative that has a fall in profitability or whatever.
Okay, so, but a cooperative could go bust, right? Still, even under this regime.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. But that, what if loads of co-ops go bust as a result of like the falling profitability?
Right. Then you can like you can have the state step in and like give greater
Yeah,
amounts
yeah,
of
yeah,
investment.
yeah. Okay, okay, that makes sense. I mean, it's like I guess what I'm getting at is that it's like yours sounds like a kind of multifaceted approach to solving this problem, right? It's like, okay, well, co-ops solve one aspect of this approach, and then like government financing solves the other, and then like direct
So
state spending solves the other.
So the socialization of investment seems to solve like 95% of the issue, right?
Right.
Because the big issue is that there are the recessions. Falls in profitability aren't like good. They're not. They have like problems for the enterprises which they occur to. But as long as there isn't the investment problem, the big reason that the falling rate of profit causes such like instability in the economy is this cause of recessions. And if you solve the recession problem, that's like the main concern that I would have solved. I would also like to solve some of the other issues. And we haven't even gotten into artificial intelligence yet, which is why I think this is only going to be a problem for like 30 years. So,
Right. Okay. So yeah.
um,
So just I've just got up this paper on Kolechki and the falling rate of profit just for viewers, right? So it's
oh,
just
I
all
found
it.
that paper too.
Oh yeah,
It's in
yeah.
my doc.
Jan Toporowski. Um, so it just
Mhm.
so all it shows is just so if everybody's looking at this, right? It just shows how you can have like the capital stock in year one, and then this is going up. Gross investment is fixed. Net investment is going down because depreciation is rising as the capital stock rises, and therefore basically what you have is the profit rate would fall unless the government steps in and spends, right? So government spending in this example is going up and up and up, therefore the rate of profit is staying the same, um,
Exactly.
while profits are going up. But if you go back to the earlier table without government, here, then if you go back to the earlier table, this is basically exactly the same thing, but without government spending, and therefore you can see that profits declining. So this is the basic Kolechkian logic, right? It's just like if the government doesn't intervene, or you don't have like an export boom, there can be other things that intervene, right, in at certain times and places. If you don't have like a trade surplus or an export boom, then you're gonna get this like falling rate of profit. But I mean, for Kolechki, it could rise again, right? It was kind of like more of a cyclical thing. Is
He
my
was like
understanding.
agnostic on whether it was like cyclical but stable or cyclical but falling.
Hmm.
You can like find writings on him just like being
Yeah.
unsure about like whether Keynes or Marx was correct on that. I found that like there are a very few things like that where Koleski was agnostic, but I've been like super soying over Koleski because it seems like everywhere where he like chose Marx or Keynes, he
Mm.
just seems to be correct, which I think is really fun.
Yeah, yeah. Kolechki, I think, he is highly rated, but he's still underrated, in my opinion.
Exactly.
And I think in terms of if Keynes, I mean, you were kind of having a go at the like animal spirits idea before,
Hmm.
as being kind of shallow. I mean, as a behavioral economist, I will say what goes on in financial markets is very real and driven by some kind of animal spirits on the part of investors and herding behavior and all that. But as a generalized explanation for the business cycle, if there is such a thing, it's not satisfactory, right? It kind of it leaves the question of what's really driving things. And Kolechki's maybe more satisfactory in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. Um,
Yeah. So I mean, when you speak about the rate of profit falling, so I know you want to talk about artificial intelligence. I'm quite obsessed by this problem from a data perspective because like
for
I
sure.
am generally skeptical of a lot of claims that are made using empirical data, especially online, because I think people are a bit sloppy and casual with how they use it.
Agreed.
But yeah, fair. So I was just wondering. So for you, it seems you express some agnosticism, which is great, but it seems like you're saying the rate of profit will fall, and then you'll have like a recession and then a crisis of profitability, and then it might go back up again. Do you necessarily think that there's a long-term tendency for the rate of profit to fall even after the restoration of profitability?
So, yeah, and it's mostly going to be about this like connection to the capital output ratio, and going into the specifics of I hate the term counter tendencies. I hate that term so much. It feels like such a cope term.
Yeah.
I think a better way of describing it would be like hot patches. Like if you're a software dev, how like there's like a problem with your thing, you have to like put a hot patch on it because calling it a counter tendency sounds like there's these
I was
like
about to say, do I want
these
to Google hot patch? But I've just got a load of medical results.
um,
But yeah, okay.
yeah. Basically the idea, like, yeah, if there's like a bug in your system, you're like
Mm,
you're fixing it live,
right.
which can like maybe temporarily solve the problem, but a lot of the time you at least find like problems down the line. The issue with most of what Marx calls counter tendencies, again, I think this is the reason he's calling them counter tendencies is going to be because of his like stupid Hegelian dialectical philosophy that's just like not helpful. But if we think of them as like hot patches where we're talking about so one thing that we can do temporarily, right? If we can notice for the entire like post-war period is there's this up until like 2005 or so. There's this steadily increasing share of women in the workforce.
Mm,
Um, so this is like a counter tendency, right? You can like expand your ability to grow, take advantage of economy of scale, take advantage of like the tendencies that Marx noticed with like overpopulation in the economy or whatever. And this is a thing that you can do to like stop profitability from falling during that period. But there's only so many women that you can put in the workforce.
mm,
Um, and the same is going to be true of things like globalization. Globalization can be like a good counter tendency to this, which we see during like the 1930 to 2008 period, a good like hot patch where if you one get the advantages from trade and two get the advantages from especially early on unequal exchange, um, then you can see like why it wouldn't fall as much. And the other one that I don't think that Marx recognizes is that the rate of profit is going to be to some extent just like connected to demand because of that like spiraling fall that I was talking about. general aggregate demand. It's going to be like they're going to be like dual influencing. Obviously, I think the rate of profit is going to be more influencing of investment and aggregate demand than I think that aggregate demand is going to be influencing of the rate of profit, but they are going to be dual influencing. And so the fact that we adopted Keynesian economics in the post-war period also helps maintain like a certain stability, and that would just make sense under the Kleskian interpretation.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think so. When we talk about like hot patches or countervailing tendencies, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
one issue I have is like this pure eyeballing of like a graph of the rate of profit, because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
look, measurement issues aside, you can't really infer much from that volatile and aggregate trend, and especially not since Marx himself noted that there's countervailing tendencies. And I think one of the issues is that when sometimes you get into these debates and people are like, oh well, if the rate of profit goes down, then obviously it proves the theory, and then if the rate of profit goes
Mm-hmm.
up, they're like, well, that's countervailing tendency. And then I'm like, well, that's actually unfalsifiable then, because whatever
Mm-hmm.
happens, it somehow proves the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. And so the way to do it is to actually somehow control for or measure these. Now you can do that statistically,
Mm-hmm.
which is what like Basu and Manolakos do, right?
Mm-hmm.
In their 2013 paper,
So
and
I,
they
sorry, I'll
say
let you
that,
finish.
yeah, they say that there might be some more historical approaches that maybe help to tease out different factors and control for different factors in other ways. But I don't know what you think of that whole debate.
I disagree that it's unfalsifiable. I'm sure that a lot of Marxists use it as unfalsifiable because
Right.
there's a lot of Marxists who are just like religious about Marxism, and I also just wouldn't consider myself a Marxist.
Okay.
I know the Basu study that you're thinking about. I I think that that one's okay. I have some issues with it, but I think that there's like it makes sense why it would find like a weak but falling counter tendency. One of the issues is that it's just going to be looking at the U.S. economy,
Yeah.
and then so like all of the benefits of globalization are just going to be like ignored. Another
They
issue, I think.
would be accounted for by their measure of like imports, though. I don't know why I'm googling this paper. I have it saved. But yeah. So that
Um,
right.
So it's going to be to some extent, right? But the way that it's going to be measuring imports, we can go into the specifics of the paper. The way that it's measuring imports wouldn't account. It would account for unequal exchange, but it wouldn't be accounting for the benefits. And of course, it wouldn't because it's a Marxian paper. It's going to be considering it like the labor theory of value. But it's not going to be accounting for what's it called? Basically regional specialization. I know there's a specific term for it, but
Do
just
you
the
mean
benefits that you
comparative
get from.
advantage?
Yes,
Yeah.
comparative.
Oh,
Yes,
right. Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh. I don't know why I couldn't think of it. It's not going to be considering comparative advantage, which I think is important. I also think that it's using the fact that it's using CPI to measure capital stock value. I don't think that's very I don't think that's very useful. I don't think it's very accurate. I think that just because like you're using consumer prices to estimate like capital stock, and we can if we look at the specifics of that, the way that capital stock prices are going to evolve over time are not going to quite track as hard onto that because of a variety of factors.
So
It's
just
also
to.
not
Oh, sorry. Carry on.
It's also not it's not accounting for the transfer of military capital to productive capital, or like what Marxists would call productive capital, which I think is like very relevant. The fact that you're all of a sudden using a bunch of capital that was used in like World War I and World War II for like military efforts, and it's all getting retransferred into capital that can be used to like grow the economy, which will lead to a temporary boom. Um, and obviously, it's not going to be accounting for the Koleskian like demand stabilization, which uh, which is a temporary. One thing I will say though is that after 2008 and before the post-war period, or sorry, like during the war and like the Great Recession and before that, we see very similar trends in the rate of profit. And the when we look at like these counter tendencies, or like hot patches, again, I think is like a much better term. They are like running out. They are hot patches. They're not things that we can
Right.
do indefinitely. They're things that we kind of seem to have run out at around 2008, and we just like haven't restored GDP growth because of that since 2008. And we can obviously make like there's some factors about like COVID and whatnot that are going to be hard
Sure.
to look at, but the uh, but if as long as, especially if we're looking at the non-financial sector, because the financial sector, I know falls slower. If we look at the non-financial sector, there's like stark falling in that period that seems unsustainable. And like we're going to be more like the pre-war period than the post-war period going forward.
So, I mean, do you think that, something like the financial crisis, right, where we had, I mean, David Harvey's spoken about this, right? He sort of documented some of the historical financial crises, and including 2008, and he was sort of saying, there was this growth in mortgages, which was partly like a political goal, partly facilitated by low interest rates, partly pushed by banks, especially through like predatory lending to certain groups. And then you had the financial sector create this massive web of financial instruments, which nobody really fully understood, and it came cascading down once people stopped being able to pay their mortgages. Um, in terms of like an explanation that relies on profit rates, like how would you link that? Because for me, that seems like a completely satisfactory explanation of the financial crisis. Like I don't see any need to invoke the tendency of the rate of profit to fall there.
So the
How would you
issue,
link
sorry.
it? Yeah, how would you link the two?
So the issue here is going to be like a very similar one to the one that happened with like the 2020 recession. Obviously, that one's a little bit complicated for like a variety of reasons. But when we look at like 2008, we see in the non-financial sector, the profit rate was falling from like 2005 going forward, right?
Mm.
Before we had this huge bubble. Um, with the financial sector, we see the financial sector with the like mortgages in particular, right, is going to be seeing this continued growth until about like late 2006, 2007, um, where we will then see like the after that it falls, right? But it seems like this investment in housing, this like big bubble and pop, is it just seems to do a good disguising of an already falling OCC that would be a recession of like the classical type. I've seen even people who support the TRPF argue both ways on this. But I think that the evidence that the OCC falling beforehand, sorry, the OCC rising to a significant degree beforehand, connected to a falling profit rate in the non-financial sector beforehand, um, and then like an obvious financial explanation of why you would have like the counter tendency that even Marx pointed out of like financialization. Why this would like disguise and have some rise until you have the fall.
Mm-mm. Is that, but is there a connection in how it's like driving, how it's driving that shift, right? So how the falling rate of profit is like driving that shift into the financial sector. Like how does that work?
So the basic idea is just going to be like that when you see falls in profitability in the non-financial sector, investors are going to have just a greater incentive to invest in the financial sector, which already falls later. And when you have like a big bubble like you have with the mortgage bubble, there's going to be even more incentive to invest in like the financial sector. Um,
Yeah, I mean
so
that's pretty straightforward, I suppose. In terms of like when that began, according to like the sort of rate of profit thesis, like when would you say that began? Because for me, it's like it sort of seems like a politically contingent development based on like the deregulation of like the 1980s, right? And I feel like that saw a massive deregulation of finance, which would have made finance relatively more profitable, than, quote unquote, real investment. Even if the rate of profit in the real economy wasn't necessarily falling. But do you see
Hmm.
it as almost the causality there is like reversed?
So I do see there is like a general financialization trend starting in like the 80s. It just seems that there's like that's like a macro trend, and on like the like year to year basis, we can see like a very big spike in financialization from like 2005 to 2008 9 ish, and then like a return to like levels that were seen in like the 1980s before that. I think a little bit lower than they were before 2005 because of some of the regulations that were implemented, but obviously not what they were before the 80s.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so I agree that there is that general trend, and that the financialization is going to be like this counter tendency is going to be like, I don't know whether you want to call it like more effective because it keeps the rate of profit higher for longer. If you want to call it like more dangerous because the bubble ends up being bigger and we get like a 2008 level of huge recession.
Mm.
But either way, it leads to like a different characterizing of it. But it ends up being within the same framework that we've seen before.
I mean, I think like it's my issue is right. I definitely, the predictive power versus causality is the sticking point here, right? And I think if you
Hmm.
kind of show some of this evidence to like a mainstream economist, they're going to be like, well, okay, of course, like lower profitability is somehow associated with recessions, right? But like,
Hmm.
of course it is. Of course it is. Recessions are like a generalized kind of decline, and even if there's a lag, right, it doesn't necessarily tell us what's like causing this. All we're seeing is that there's a recession begins, as profitability declines. The explanation for that is somewhere in the ether. Um, and,
Hmm.
uh, and 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 you get obviously the actual recession occurs. But I just yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like the causality here is a bit suspect. There's regressions, but even a regression, even a probit regression, right? Of
Hmm.
So we've got like the rate of profit. How many would so we've got like the rate of profit on a second you um we've got sorry so this probit paper that you linked me to does show the it does show that like the rate of profit is a predictor of recessions, and you can control for a load of other things. So what we're looking at
Yeah.
here, everybody, is a regression table. So if you're not familiar with them, I'm very sorry, but yeah. So what we actually care about is this little thing, the rate of profit. The higher the rate of profit, because this is negative, the less likely a recession, right? And conversely, the lower the rate of profit, the more likely a recession in the subsequent periods. I presume lagged, or is it contemporaneous?
Um,
That looks like it might be
on
contemporaneous, or uh,
yeah,
recession observed. So that's contemporaneous, right?
I think it's the following year, right? Which would be
Following
which you
year.
can I could be wrong on that. I would have to look at the paper again. But that would be consistent with the 4 to 5 quarters before
Yeah.
predicted by the other paper.
But this, like,
Um,
again, like, I feel like Marxist economics is a bit stuck in the mud sometimes with this because, like, I mean, it's fair. We
mhm,
spoke about, like, the lack of availability of data, right, of the right data categories. There's a lack of interest
mhm,
in it because the economists just don't, they don't know or care about Marxism, so they're not going to investigate the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. But mainstream economists do have very good methods for uncovering causality, and I feel like
mhm.
observing graphs or even a regression, of this form, is not necessarily that persuasive evidence. Like I'd have to see more to try and determine causality.
Mhm. The so again, I don't think that we can have credence so high that we can that we can say that there's I don't think we can have like 95% credence or something like that. We can't do like the normal like physics standards or anything like that. But I do
Sure.
think that we can have like a high enough credence from something like this where it just seems to be like the best explanation we have. So if we look at if we consider like other explanations for causality, right? If we wanted to single out '08 and just say like that one doesn't count and look at the other recessions, like that study does, that Probit model, we can look at like what generally causes recessions. Is it going to be like is it going to be like a lack of income, which leads to like a lack of consumer demand, which leads to the traditional Keynesian issues? Is it just going to be like is it just going to be random, right? Is it going to be just like sometimes people are like don't spend as much, or there's like some like every single one is caused by its own like thing that causes animal spirits, or is it going to be something more specific, where we see where we can like look at like, is it going to be specifically demanded investment, or is it going to be like where the what a lot of like I don't know, like what an Austrian would say is like it's like government influence or something like that. Can
Yeah.
we
So,
notice
well,
any
they talk about
correlations
low
there?
interest rates most likely. Low
Exactly,
interest
low
rates,
interest
and
rates.
therefore a bubble, and therefore a recession.
Exactly. Like
I see.
and we just when we just look at like even though we don't have enough data to say like 95% likelihood this is the thing that causes it.
Mm.
Of those things, it seems like when we compare them against each other, the Koleskian interpretation seems to have like the most evidence because of Probit models like that. I agree. If we had better studies on this, I would love to have better studies on this.
I'd like to
I would
see the
love if most of the
OCC.
papers.
No,
You'd
sorry,
like to
carry
see
on.
the
OCC in that regression, right?
exactly a capital
Yeah,
output in it.
yeah. The OCC, well, the lagged OCC, in that regression. So then you've got like the lagged OCC is predicting the rate of profit, which is predicting the future recession, right? That seems to be like a nice little causal chain, but I don't think it's in that. Again, I've just skimmed it and looked at the regression table, but I don't think it's in that paper.
hmm yeah, I don't I have to check again because I'm thinking about it and I vaguely remember seeing something like capital output ratio or OCC or something like that. But I, I don't know. It's been like a couple months since I've looked at it, so I'll double check.
Yeah, no,
But
I'll have
I
to have a
don't
good
think
look
it's
for that.
there. Um,
Yeah.
again, I agree that if we had like, it would be so nice if we had like good data on this, and if
Mm.
the like half of the papers on it weren't written by like Marxist Leninists and crazy people.
Well, yeah, I mean, this
um,
is this is another point that's worth making, and in a way, I don't like making this point, but it is also possibly more important than anything else I've said, which is like researcher degrees of freedom in these types of things are such a big deal. We know, right,
mhm,
from contemporary academic economics, and there's this paper which looked at, I think it tried to choose like something that wasn't really partisan or a really big like theoretical issue in economics, and they got different teams of researchers to look at the I think it was the effect of like the school leaving age on teen pregnancies or something. So it was like, okay, maybe some conservatives have opinions on that, but like it's not a big contentious political issue. And basically all the different teams of researchers just recovered different estimates for the effect of changing the school leaving age on teen pregnancies, right? And
mhm,
therefore, some of them were negative and some of them were positive and some of them were statistically insignificant. I think they veered that, increasing the school leaving age reduces teen pregnancies overall, but there was wide range of variation just because of who was researching it and all these little decisions that they make. And so this bothers me with the rate of profit, because you've got like you've got people who are mostly Marxists, and we're all biased, right? We're all biased.
mhm,
But people who are mostly Marxists looking at this and then being like, yeah, Marxist economics is supported, but in something that they're so invested in, I think the bias is going to be even bigger than that teen pregnancy
mhm,
thing. And even if there's no like overt political bias, it's like, finding a statistically significant coefficient that proves your theory in the modern age of computing and statistical practices is actually not that big a deal. You
No,
could
it's super
because
easy.
of
Yeah.
p hacking. So it's like this is why I kind of I get so picky and skeptical because like I mean I do this research, right? I see how the sausage is
Hmm.
made. I can do it myself. I could go and come up with a silly little model of economics and I can change the data set, keep running regressions until I get something that seems to support it, right? So this is do you see where I'm coming from when I'm just like perhaps a little bit annoyingly skeptical of all of this?
No, I agree. I was actually, until I did like months of just deep diving on this topic. I was like pretty skeptical of it myself. It wasn't really until I started like looking at like the post Keynesian interpretations that it started to make sense.
Sure.
And it's easy to be really skeptical when like Michael Roberts is constantly talking about like the great economic success of China and how it's gonna like outpace the U.S. and how it's like a real socialist utopia or whatever. Um,
Yeah, yeah. It's
yeah.
I try not to bring in things like that in general, but sometimes it becomes impossible to ignore. You're like, no, this person is like just talking absolute nonsense. Like, how can I believe what they do? And Michael Roberts, by the way, like, I mean, no disrespect to the guy, like, I don't, whatever, I don't know, but like, he's like one of the worst offenders with the rate of profit because I do think he just sticks to these
Mhm.
like very, very crude graphs. He doesn't really share his data. He's not very transparent, and he attaches what I
Mhm.
would consider excessive interpretations to what are actually kind of fairly vague trends that don't control for hot patches. Let's use your term in the way
Mhm.
that they perhaps should, or in any sort of way at all. So like
Mhm.
I really don't I don't like that whole area. And then you're right, yeah, when they start defending like China and stuff, you're like, okay. Or the Russian invasion of Ukraine too. That's
Right.
another one. It's just like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I don't think we want to get into a conversation about
no.
that, but defending Russia's invasion is like ridiculous.
Yeah.
No, I think that that Basu
Mm.
and what's his name? Basu, Maito, and Cardetti tend to be the best ones that I can find on this, especially Basu.
Mm.
Um, but I agree that that there does seem to be like a lot of bias and a lot of lack of transparency. On the flip side, though, I will say the few papers that I found of like neoclassical economists or neoclassical synthesis, whatever, like mainstream economists or even post Keynesians trying to look at the rate of profit and like debunk it will often have like very very similar trends. I think it's like really really hard to find good data for
Yeah.
either side.
No, yeah, I mean,
But
they don't like. There's the Larry Summers and who was it? Summers and someone. I mean, this is like an '80s paper. Do you know that one where they sort of look at the rate of profit? And I think like they look at it over a very short time period, and they're sort of like as in it's really not that long at all. And I think it's like it's fine. It's kind of the data they had at the time, right? In the '70s, data was even worse than it is now. But
right.
I don't find that convincing. I find myself not entirely persuaded either way, but definitely thinking it needs more investigation.
For sure, yeah. In that case, I think we'll have a lot of agreement.
Mm.
Um, we can we can go into more specifics if you want about like the mechanisms behind it and whatnot, and like why the data, like why even though a lot of the data is going to be biased in that way, why I think some of this data, even if it might be biased, because like obviously the people producing it, like some of them are Marxian economists and the other ones are going to be post Keynesian
Mm.
economists who are going to have, both of them are going to have like incentives to defend their theory. Everybody's going to have confirmation bias. That's like how humans are. We can get into like the specifics of those studies. I could also just send you those. I think the more important thing to start talking about though
Yeah,
is timeline, because I do
yeah,
think the TRPF and more importantly technology in general puts like a deadline on capitalism, and not just because of the investment, but also because the thing that causes the investment to fall or the rate of profit to fall would be obviously the capital output ratio, at least from what we've talked about so far. And the capital output ratio is going to be dependent on like developing technologies, and artificial intelligence is going to be a huge part of that in the coming years. And I kind of want to talk about like one, what that's going to do to the rate of profit, and two, more importantly, I want to talk about sort of the existential risk factors of developing advanced artificial intelligence that's sooner than we think.
Okay, no, please do, because I know this. I know this is something that you're really interested in, and I'm interested to know how it relates to the rate of profit as well.
For sure, yeah. So the explanation of how it's going to be related to the rate of profit, I think I already kind of gave. It's really simple, in that if you have developing, like fast developing technology, that's going to be increasing of the capital output ratio, which is going to therefore decrease the rate of profit according to the theory, because the the supply is going to go up, right? But when we look at like the timelines and what specifically that means, if we compare the development of artificial intelligence to the development of the human brain via evolution, they actually track onto each other remarkably well. Obviously, it's going to be different scales. It's going to be a much shorter scale for AI, but the general trend of the curve is going to be very, very similar. There's like more specific versions of this where you can look at like the genetic anchors, the brain size anchors. You can like they're gonna have like specific artificial intelligence anchors to like track it onto, and I can send you some of the breakdown of it. But it's called the biological anchors model, where you align those two on each other. And if you do that, what you end up finding is that that trend is supposed to develop like human level brains in artificial intelligence by about 2050. Or at least that was the data a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Updated data from the modern one, Ajay Katra, the same person who made the biological anchors model originally, came out with a 2-year update where she adds a few anchors and reweights some of the anchors based on new arguments brought out by Yudowsky and a few other people about why the barrier for like transformative artificial intelligence is probably lower than we think, because of a variety of things, such as like it's not necessarily the case that artificial intelligence is going to have it's not going to have our like our level of like intuition, our ability to learn things quickly, but it could easily compensate for that by just like having more memory, right? If it has more storage, then it doesn't necessarily need to learn things as quickly. It can just like remember and learn a lot of things and be trained beforehand.
Right, so it
Given
won't use
this,
the mental shortcuts that we use, right? Because it will just
exactly.
basically have more power, right? Okay, that makes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it'll be like brute forcing it to an extent. Going off of this, the level at which we reach human level intelligence is 2040, and once we reach human level intelligence, then obviously we can simulate like AI researchers, right? And we can simulate AI researchers with much more computing power. So the ability to like scale up on AI will like rapidly increase. So approaching this 2040 date, I think you're gonna. We already see it, right? Like AI is like becoming like rapidly advanced. I don't know if you've seen like photo generated AI from like
Sure.
2020 versus 2022.
Oh, I haven't
It's like
seen like the comparison, no.
let me see if I can find something really quick, but it's like wild. It's like you
Yeah.
see, it's like it goes from like little blobs of like barely recognizable images to like what we see today, which at first glance is like indistinguishable, right? Um,
Yeah.
uh, so with some of that stuff, we can see the advances already occurring. And if we just like map on the biological anchors, then we see that that's going to be like rapid advances, right? The last 20, or sorry, the next 20 years are going to be the equivalent of like the sapien brain development stage, where there was like a huge level of brain development, right? Um, so the rapid increases over the next 20 years should lead to like rapid capital output issues until we reach which obviously would cause recession. Until we reach the 2040 date, which will have human level artificial intelligence. And the other issue that comes with that is the alignment problem, where we have if we have an artificial intelligence that's this advanced, it's so advanced it's able to create like more advanced artificial intelligence, and then more advanced artificial intelligence is able to create more advanced artificial intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. Um, the goal that we give it at that moment is really, really important, because if it's aligned with our goals, then this like hyper
Mm.
advanced artificial intelligence is already going to be able to like do good things for the world, and like have good ethics. But if we don't, there's huge risks in terms of like if a human can get into like the cybersecurity issues that we have with the government. Like we already know that China's been able to hack like massive security server breaches within the U.S. government. Then certainly a super AI could do it. And that's not to mention, that's only if we're just thinking about like all of the like government and military stuff. On a layer lower than that, we know that the NSA is like required that like every device that we own has like a backdoor in it, and we know that people have access to those. It would be very, very easy for a super intelligent AI to like hack into and get access to like most devices in the world pretty quickly. Um, and beyond that, it has the ability to like develop much more effective like propaganda in order to
Mm.
like convince people to do what it wants. It has the ability to develop like very effective like weaponry in order to like get people to do what it wants. Its ability to have power is very, very strong. So if we give it a goal like maximize profit, if Google develops it, that could be like a huge problem. So
Mm.
I think that having that democratized is also really, really important, so that we have the greatest possible chance of giving it goals that are in the interests of everybody, as opposed to the interests of like just the people who own the company that make it, or China, which would be like just the interests of the CCP.
So yeah, so I feel like if with AI is I feel like it's just like if it reaches that stage, we aren't we just kind of fucked anyway? Is it because
Um,
is it
so
not the case that it will just figure out a way to outsmart us all, and it will start to have its own goals that may or may not coincide with ours? Because if it's like proper AI, then won't it just set its own goals?
So this is rather intuitive for us, because humans have this like really like hodgepodge mess of goals, right? We have some
Mm.
incentive to like be rational and be ethical, but we all have some incentive to like prioritize ourselves first. Where when we're hungry, we have this really strong drive to eat, whether we think it's like good or not. We have these like this really complex set of drives.
Mm.
But if we were to give it like good alignment, right, it has an incentive to maintain whatever alignment it has, right? So if my goal is just to like let's just use like a simple example of like a bad alignment, but that's easy to conceptualize. If we give it the goal of like make as many paper clips as possible, um, it will have the incentive to maintain the goal of making as many paper clips as possible, because that's how it makes as many paper clips as possible, right? If it gets a different goal, if all of a sudden it starts thinking make like orange juice or something, that will not be good for its utility function. So if it's being rational, it's going to have to put in safeguards to make sure that it maintains whatever goal that it has. This is kind of true for like any goal, right? If we give it like a goal of like maximize good consequences, in order to maximize good consequences, it's going to want to maintain the goal of maximizing good consequences. Otherwise, there won't be as many good consequences in the future.
Okay, I'm not sure I fully understand this. Like, if it why it can't change its orientation? Is that because is this no matter how smart AI gets, it it's not
It,
gonna
it's
have that capacity that we have?
so it would have the capacity. The issue is the incentive, right?
Right. Okay.
So the if for whatever reason, right, maximizing good consequences was better achieved by say I don't know, maximizing paper clips, right? Maybe
Yeah.
that like in order to maximize like to make people the happiest, the way that you do that is by creating the most paper clips. This is like wildly unlikely, but it's possible,
Yeah.
right? If that were the case and it can come to that conclusion, then it would probably just switch its goal to maximizing paper clips, right? It would just
Right.
switch its
Yeah.
goal. But if it has a goal, the incentive to maintain that goal in order to continue to do that goal in the future is what its incentive is at, right? And it not only will have the incentive to like not change its goal, it'll have incentives to like insulate its goal, to make sure that it's not like that nobody can reprogram it to change its goal or turn it off, or break it, or like that that like basic entropy, or like different whatever happening in the world, it could like by accident change it. They'd want to put like safeguards in place. They'd probably put like redundancy to make sure that it has like multiple copies of its goals, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't humans have this, or why don't humans have this incentive to stick to their given goal? Because you're saying AI will be like humans, right? Basically, but except this seems to be
That
the
it'll
one
be
difference.
human level intelligence.
Human level
It'll be
intelligence.
human level intelligence, but it's going to be very different in the way that its utility function is made, because human utility, or like human like motivation, is like a really really complex hodgepodge of like we have that was like built by evolution, right? So all of these things were at one point really really useful for survival and reproduction, right? Um,
Yeah.
we have these drives towards like obviously like eating food, sleeping, having sex, etc. And then also later on the line, we have this drive that we developed towards like being rational and being ethical. Before that, we even had empathy, which led us to have like some similar actions to if we just had an incentive to be ethical. But now we have this like this extra thing which allows us to like to consider things rationally. The idea with the AI would be we wouldn't want to give it all these goals of like sleep when you're tired, eat when you're hungry, et cetera, et cetera. And have it alongside all these like other irrational goals, or sorry, have it alongside this like rational goal. We'd want to just give it like a rational goal, and then it would consider like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
order to accomplish that goal, is it time to sleep, right? We don't
Yeah.
consider like in order to accomplish our goals, is it time to sleep? Where we consider like, oh man, I'm tired, it's time to sleep.
There's no
It,
like but there's no guarantee, so even if it sticks to its goal, it can do like a sort of like iRobot type situation. And this, I know that's a horrible film and I'm very sorry for referencing it. But
I actually haven't seen iRobot.
have you not seen it? Oh.
No.
Well, you might be missing out on a decent hate watch, but yeah, so
Okay.
but yeah, like it's just a case where, you know, the robots are programmed with the three laws of robotics, right? But they
Hmm.
kind of figure out that the best way to achieve those is actually some kind of effectively genocide, right? So
Right. The three laws of robotics would be like a really, really bad way to approach alignment. That's obviously something that people like think about originally, because it's like a really old thing that was taken up by popular media. That we could have like that we could give it these like deontological rules of like if you're gonna do these good things, or whatever your main goal is, you can do them with the exception of these deontological rules. The problems with these end up being like the basic problems with the ontology. And if we get into like what the alignment should be, we're basically just going to get into like what are ethics, right? What would be a good ethical code to put into it? And we can get into that too if you want. I'm down to talk about like why I'm a moral realist and a utilitarian, and why I think programming the robot to be like to maximize preferable experiences and minimize dispreferable experiences would be like the optimal form of alignment.
yeah, I get, yeah, I get like the issues with the ontology, right? I guess that makes sense, I suppose, but the there are, I mean, any, okay, so I don't want to maybe have to go into too much depth on this, partly because I probably don't have time, but
It's understandable.
I you know, I'm probably something of a pragmatist in the sense that I don't think like pure consequentialism or pure deontology are really necessarily, you know, they can both be reduced to absurdities, right? So with a
Hmm.
consequentialist AI, it can like throw a bunch of people under the bus in order to attain like maximum happiness, right? Is that not a problem for your framework?
So the issue that I'm going to run into is I'm going to be I'm going to be a moral realist. So we might be approaching this from different like perspectives, where you might be thinking like um, this doesn't exactly like this seems like dispreferable, or this seems preferable. I'm thinking about like what is rationally preferable, right? What is the like the rational conclusion to come to? And the reason that that seems really unintuitive is because most of the time, when you throw one person under the bus to help another person, it ends up leading to bad consequences, right? So just basic questions of like if you spend more resources on one person than another, in general, that's going to have worse, like people are going to be less happy overall on aggregate than if you spent the equal resources on both of them, just because of like marginal utility of money in general, right? Like it's not just marginal utility of each of the goods that money buys, but like money itself has a marginal utility and how much more happy it would make a person.
Hmm.
Um, but if we look at like the specific situations where that wouldn't be the case, it makes more sense. Like in the same way that like when we have the gambler's fallacy, right? Do you know what the gambler's fallacy is?
What you mean? Do you mean the kind of hot hand fallacy?
Um,
I think no, we
I
might be thinking of two
yeah,
different.
no,
What is
I
that? What
think
are we
that
talking about?
yeah, where like if you say you're rolling a die, right, and it
Yeah,
comes up six, five times in a row,
yeah.
does that mean it's like less likely to
Oh,
come
yeah,
up
yeah,
six?
yeah,
Like a
yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly.
yeah, yeah. So this is like a unintuitive to us, right? This is like something wildly unintuitive. Another one would
Mm,
be like the the game show fallacy, where which is basically like there's three doors. You pick one door, and the game show host opens that door to reveal that there's like a donkey behind it. Behind one of the doors is a
yep.
car. Are you better off switching or not? You're better off switching because you had a 2/3 chance of getting it wrong the first time, and they opened up one of the doors that was bad. But that's like wildly unintuitive. Both of these are examples of like mathematical situations that are like unintuitive, but
Mm,
we're not going to change the laws of math because the particular situation is unintuitive, right? We're gonna
yeah.
we're gonna see that like these general rules are broadly really intuitive, and that the specific situation is going to be less intuitive. So in situations where it actually does lead to like overall better consequences, to throw some people over the bus to help other people, it's probably just the case that that's because that's like actually the better thing to do, right? That these people that these people are like not going to be as benefited by being thrown under the bus than the people who are being helped, and that's like a good thing overall. I don't think that consequentialism taken to any extreme is going to be a problem, and I think that adding anything else is going to like lead to a pretty big problem for parsimony.
Mm, yeah. Um, I guess it depends on the outcomes you're focused on, right? So it's like I think one of the good things, about humans is that we can be quite pragmatic about the range of outcomes. But if you have, I mean, this is one of my problems with technocracy, right? But if you have like an AI that's kind of the determining the what counts as the greatest good, it's going to focus on some outcomes over others, right? And that's where you get the throwing people under the bus because, like, let's say GDP, right, is like a pretty standard
Hmm.
example, right? Economists,
Hmm.
at least in practice or in power, have often cared about GDP. And you can obviously maximize overall GDP while completely screwing over a whole subset of the population, whether it's like poorer people or certain races or even people in other countries if you're targeting your own country's GDP, right? So
Hmm.
is how do we avoid that type of problem?
So I think this is the biggest alignment problem, right? I think the best solutions to this are going to be a lot more research into like neuroscience, ethics,
Mm,
and AI all in one. It's like just going to be like generally like alignment research, because the hardest part of figuring out like uh, how we're aligning it is what is defining utility, right? We can
mm,
define utility as like preferable experiences minus dispreferable experiences, but how do we tell it what like a truly preferable
mm.
experience is, right? Like how do we communicate to the AI like what a good consequence is? And I think that the answer to that is basically just like I don't know. And there's a good chance that we're going to get it wrong. But the solution is just like how can we do as much as possible to try and not get it wrong, right? How do we like put as much resources into like defining utility as possible, A, and B, how do we make sure that whoever develops it agrees to those conclusions, right? And
Mm.
it's not like China developing it or Google developing it, which are like two of the largest projects right now developing like working on generalized intelligence.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, certainly we can agree. So, I mean, by your uh, from what you've said, I would say that you're saying that, you know, the AI is going to be here in the future, and it's about how we deal with it. Like, certainly, I agree that if we're going to have it, then we need to put some careful thought into its goals. And you know, if we've got a current global system, then that doesn't seem to be what's going to happen. Or at least there will be careful thought put into its goals, but it will be the wrong type of thought, right? With the wrong goals, based on whether that's like, you know, private companies or states, you know, wanting to conquer and exploit, all those types of things, right?
Yeah. And even like the best solution right now is probably to get like the US to like nationalize some like really strong human level intelligence AI research, right?
Mm.
But even then, we all know like even though the US might be like one of the more democratic situations, especially probably it's certainly the most democratic that has like real large scale AI being developed. But that
Yeah.
you and I both know that like the issues with like manufacturing consent and corporate control, and also the issues with like lobbying. We know that like a majority of policies within our like biased pluralism system, it's going to be like leaning more towards taking corporate interests over democratic interests. So like, however we can democratize this process would be good, but
And
it is definitely
nationalist
an uphill.
interests as well, right? I
Exactly,
mean,
yeah,
that's
and
why
that's
if you've
just
got a nationalized AI program and fucking DeSantis gets into the
exactly.
presidency, right? Then what, you know, what's it going to be used for? Or whoever DeSantis
hmm
is in 2040, you know, the 2040 version of DeSantis slash Trump, who's going to be probably worse.
I mean, in an ideal world, we would have like all of the people that currently exist and all of the people that will exist in the future working together to try and like align the AI to like all of our interests, right? But there's like only so much we can do. I agree that we're going to
Yeah.
be like we're going to be really really hampered by this national interest if we can't make it an international effort. But making it an international effort, like look how that's gone with climate change, right?
Yeah,
Eh,
yeah. I mean, I was about to mention climate change. We also need to do exactly what you said for climate change, bring future people on board, and yeah, come together and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to. I don't like being a doomer. So I'm not going to say like, oh, it's never going to happen or anything. But it's going to be tough. So
on the
that.
bright side, as much as it will be as much as it will suck living under the next 20 years, if I'm correct about the rate of profit, right? Because as we're getting from where AI is now to where like to human level intelligence, there's a lot of steps in between that's going to like ramp up fast with development of technology. We're going to have huge recessions, which the bad side is that we have to live through a bunch of recessions, and it's going to probably like people will die. It's going to be bad.
Yeah.
But the good side of that is that there will be more pressure, like strong pressure to move to like a socialist society. With something like climate change, it's really easy to say like that's for future generations to deal with. I don't want to sacrifice my quality of life.
Hmm.
That it's like it's easy to put out of mind. It's easy to like have doubts about. But if there's these constant recessions, and everybody knows that like there are these constant recessions due to like a lack of investment that needs to be there. Um, the incentive to at least socialize investment is high. And once investment is socialized, the government can choose like this is the project that I want to invest in for AI development. And
Yeah.
ideally, it'll be choosing the right projects.
Yeah, I mean, this
Um,
does that kind of links the conversation back round, right? Because I wanted to say like all this stuff about AI. There's not we haven't just randomly started talking about it, right? You think it's actually quite crucial for debates over the rate of profit, or it links heavily to them, right?
exactly. Yeah.
So
It's the
what's
only
could you just
reason. It's
explain
the
that
main
for us
reason.
again?
Yeah, so the big thing is like the rate of profit isn't just going to be the cause of recessions and instability in a capitalist economy. The prediction, even by Marx himself, was that labor saving technology through this falling rate of profit will lead to like an instability and an inability to maintain capitalism. And part of
Hmm.
that's going to be that this rapidly developing AI, right, from now to 20 years from now, median, I should clarify because I saw some people in your chat too,
Hmm.
that it's there's a 50-50 chance by 2040. There's like a 90% chance by the end of the century, and like a
Yeah.
30% chance by like 2030. Um, sorry, a
Okay.
30% chance by 2036, a 15% chance by 2030.
But
Um,
as the AI expands, then you get what like capital intensity becomes, I guess, almost approaching infinity, right? And
Basically, yeah,
yeah,
capital output becomes much higher.
I mean, I think I can agree that that presents a problem for a capitalist economy, because it becomes, if you can produce anything as efficiently as possible, right, as in terms of like, you know, with kind of what you might call self-reproducing machines, then it does seem to me like, regardless of everything else we've said in that edge case, right, like profitability is potentially gonna fall to zero, right, because you've got self-perpetuating production.
And with the machine itself, it becomes like complicated, right? Because if it's given the goal of like maximize shareholder interest for Google, first of all, it depends on like what it means by that. But if that's its goal, then like it's not necessarily going to struggle to produce like profit and a good life for these people. But that's probably because it's going to be having some sort of like fascistic economy, right? Where the state is like broadly controlling the corporate industry that exists, or like, or maybe not the state, but like this AI that basically functions as a state. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not going to be considering like making goods for other people. They're like, no matter what, even if there is an ability to maintain profit based on like whatever goal it's given, it's going to have a huge problem doing that. One, in like a standard market format, and two, even if it somehow managed to do that, the externalities are huge if we don't get it aligned correctly. And if it is aligned correctly, we'll pretty much already have socialism, right? It'll be like democratized in the sense that it'll be representing everybody's interests impartially, which basically that's what democracy is, right? It's a government structure that represents interests impartially. And then it'll be controlling the vast swath of the economy because it'll be more productive at like every job than we are relatively quickly if it's advancing at that rate.
I mean, and then you've got another problem, right, as well, which is at that stage, and I think this applies to like automation in as much as it applies to like AI, so perhaps a slightly weaker type of machine. But like if you've got like capital controlling all the machines, as in like capital or owners of capital, right, then you get a huge problem of like distribution, and like distribution of like income and wealth and power.
Exactly, yeah. And once it's brutalized in its efficiency, like it would be under a generalized intelligence, the problem is only exasperated to a huge degree.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
um yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I don't, you know, there's some people talking about AI in the chat, maybe a little bit earlier as well, like the ins and outs of it, because I don't know enough about like how it actually works. I know there's some debate over like whether we'll approach this level of AI. I mean, what do you think of like inevitably like Chat GPT? Because I know the obvious answer to what I'm about to ask is, well, Chat GPT is not there yet, which is completely fair, but it seems to have some very specific problems with the way it constructs sentences, despite being able to produce ridiculous essays on, you know, whatever, the falling rate of profit, probably. Maybe I should get it to do that actually. But then sometimes it goes completely wrong because it's not actually working at all like a human, right? So you don't foresee this being a problem in the future for AI? You think we're going to overcome this?
So, I mean, this is about what we would expect for where we're at, right? It's not like it's supposed to be developing like human level sentences at that point. We're probably not going to have like a large language model that's perfect at like being a chatbot until like five-ish years before we actually get like a human level AI, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's one huge aspect of being a human level AI is being able to think linguistically like a human AI.
Mm.
But I agree that ChatGPT is like it's not generalized yet. I think the biggest issue right now is honestly just uh, a limited amount of training data
Mm.
because it's it's just going to be inherently so, right? Especially this early on. It's not going to be able to handle that much training data. It'll take way longer to train if it does. And two, it's just like the data that it has access to is just like what's publicly available on the internet, which a lot of what's publicly available on the internet is going to be basically jargon, right? Um,
Yeah, like Wikipedia or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Or sorry, not even just jargon, but like if you go to like Reddit, right? There's a bunch of stuff that's just like not words. There's a bunch of stuff that's like not useful for a chatbot, and I know for a fact that it gets a lot of its stuff from Reddit, just because one, Reddit is huge, and two, if you look at if you look at some of the problems with it that exist now, there's a few tokens that break it. One of them's like solid gold Magikarp. If you type that in with capital S, capital G, capital M, and you have that no spaces. If you type that in, the bot gives like wild responses. It gives completely broken responses. So broken, in fact, that if you turn the variability rate down to 0 so that it's supposed to be deterministic, it's no longer deterministic just because it doesn't know what to do with like words like that because it was just grabbed from Reddit. And those are going to be the types of things that it's like grabbing from those pages and it just like doesn't know what to do with.
don't go on Reddit is good advice for AI and for humans. I think.
True, true.
Yeah.
That's what we've learned, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I guess I mean I'm slowly losing this Arathi Basin, and I've got to eat. But I don't know. You know, I hope this was like a useful conversation for you and for everyone watching. Of course, I don't. Is there anything we've like missed? I think we got about as far as you can get into the weeds of the rate of profit as you can on this format. I feel like any further and you basically just need to like write it out and do the maths. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything that we missed. Obviously, like, please plug your channel. As somebody made me aware earlier, like I didn't actually introduce you properly, so you know I'm good at my job. But you know, yeah, anything you want to say or you want to discuss further.
No, it's all good. Don't worry about it. My name is I guess my channel name is Phenomiks. I make YouTube videos. I do debates sometimes. I do video essays sometimes. I make content from like a liberal socialist, effective altruist perspective. I think that the liberal socialism and effective altruism, one, go really, really well together. They're both going to be really centered on this utilitarianism, and two, that they're very, very important for our time. Getting socialism is obviously very, very important given the AI stuff and the rate of profit stuff that we've been talking about. And the EA is going to push me towards some of that like long-termist, really considering the future people behavior.
Maybe another time we can talk about effective altruism. I was going to make a video about it one day. But yeah, I like. I mean, I give to give well. I kind of agree with effective altruism. I don't like the places some people take it, but I don't. Yeah, like I said, I've got to. I'm having dinner cooked for me, and I need to.
I'm glad. There seems to be this weird. Yeah, I'll just finish up really quick.
Sure. No, don't rush.
There seems to be this weird trend amongst leftists to like bash effective altruism because it's like the first things that we do as like introductory stuff is like give to like malaria nets as opposed to giving to like systemic change. But if you look at like the in-depth of the effective altruist movement, the movement itself is like wildly left-leaning. A lot of the like the founders are like socialists or ex-socialists or like socialist adjacent. The leaders and the founders, and the long-termist goals of like aligning AI seem to be like and like focusing on that the existential risk seems to be like really, really aligned with left-wing policies. And even if we look at like open philanthropy, a huge portion of where they give their money is like political advocacy for animal rights and like in prison reform, things like this that are like clearly demonstrably places that we can do good by spending our money. So I'm glad that you're not falling under that trend. It's good to find another pro EA or a generally pro EA socialist.
Yeah. Certainly in principle and in terms of like just doing the best you can with your money, giving more and giving it effectively, I think are like obviously pretty sensible things. But yeah, like so, I mean, I guess it's the same with everything, right? But sometimes people take it to kind of weird places. Effective altruism that I'm not entirely comfortable with. You know.
Yeah, we can talk about some of the specifics you have issues with later. I'll send you some of the studies over. I don't want to keep you for too long.
I'd like to look at these. I need to look at these studies in depth. And like you said, you know, it's cool. You know, we can maybe talk another time as well when I've read like all of these the profitability studies and stuff in full, because obviously it's good to have an informed discussion.
Yeah, if you want to pull me on stream whenever, I'm down to talk there too. If you want to just hop in a private VC or DM me, I'm down to talk about whatever specifics that you have questions about. It's been a really good chat. Thanks for talking.
Yeah, thanks so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
And again, I'm Phenomiks on YouTube, Phenomiks. And if you want to reach out to me, my Twitter has open DMs. So if you want to if just for the audience, I saw a lot of people being requesting debates and stuff. You can find me there. And thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Have a nice day / evening.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, everybody. So obviously I'm like, oh yeah, literally. That's good timing. I'm literally about to lose this BG. But yeah, I hope that was enjoyable. And my inability to play WoW well is only matched by my ability to about economics well. So there you go. And I'll see you all. I'll see you all next time. I'm about to move house, so it might not be that soon. I'm moving house on Tuesday. Well, mate, I mean, if I get everything set up, I don't fucking know. Moving house is really stressful. Maybe I'll take a break. But anyway, I'm rambling, so I'll see you all later.